All right, so what we're looking at doing is creating final renderings out of Twinmotion. And there are some universal things that I want to set up first, okay? So inside of Twinmotion, I'm going to have a media mode where I'm establishing specific things for every individual view. But I also have this sort of global world view where I do want to make some things standard across all views. Okay, so I'm going to start there. Like for instance, for Cliff House, all the cities and stuff in the background, probably not the best background image, right? So to change that, I am going to go, oh gosh, where do I change that at? I've forgotten. It is third one down, and I believe it's under location. Yeah, third icon down. So this is called setting. And I'm going to go background. And right here, I can change the city background picture to either mountains or countryside. For this one, probably countryside is going to work really well. There are some methods to build your own versions of these. Essentially, what's happening here is there is a great big dome over everything in Twinmotion. And it's essentially mapping an image to that, right? So we're looking at the inside of a half sphere. So I can make my own version of those to make my own background. Typically, I have yet to find a specific need to do that, right? If I have a dense urban environment and I want Chicago all around me, best way to do that is to quickly with the bunnies on each side, quickly model Chicago, right? And then maybe I'm setting this background sky. There's one in here that is simply blank, none, right? What's that? Yeah, so Jared's question, can you use a location? Yeah, you can set your actual location. And for the most part, like if shade and shadow is imperative that is 100% correct, then I would set my location. And there is also on here, when I go to location, there is a mapping tool. So right now, by default, we're located in Paris because that's where the Twinmotion team is. And I can change that to a different location. Let's like just drag and drop that someplace to the middle of the United States. You're going to see it's not going to make a drastic change on shade and shadow. It made some. But it's the other thing you can think about is what I'm usually doing for these, unless, like I said, unless I'm doing a shadow study, right? I am just coming in and I'm adapting what true north is. Okay. Or if I am pushing way closer to the equator or way closer to a pole, then I might, really look at where I'm setting my location. There is also the ability to import location around you, but that's not the best. That's not going to give you the best data for a rendering. Okay. So let's go back. So that's changing the background, super important. And also note, you can rotate the background around if you're like, I don't want to see the cute little Italian village. I can rotate that around and hide it. Okay. One of the key things to wrap your head around, though, and this is every 3D program ever, is I can essentially see infinitely in all directions. And that's a problem, right? At some point, I have to build things to stop what I am seeing. And so that's just one of those problems you're always going to deal with when you're working in 3D. And it has to do with how you model context. And it also has to do with how you set your camera views up. Okay, so really pay attention to those things. So for this, I know that one of my key views is going to be something like this, right? I definitely like this sort of shot of the house, ground plane looking up. It's very cool. It's already an art daily for the house itself. Just kind of makes sense. It's kind of nifty, right? So that's going to be one of the first renderings that I'm going to set up. So I'm going to go ahead and move my camera to something closer to that. And I'm going to move this out and that out just so I can sort of see where I'm at. And I'm going to go to the next piece down, which is media. This is where we start setting up our different modes of presentation. Right? So again, we've got import and then context and then settings, which is also kind of context, but a different name. And then we've got media and output. So literally, I'm always working my way down this list in Twin, right? So right here, I'm at media. We are focused on still images. So we're going to use that. We will get into a handful of these videos in particular in presentation mode before the end of the semester. Last project in particular, we'll touch on these. But both are really easy to work with. So I'm going to go to image, the image tab, or the image button. Super simple to get started. I'm just going to click create image. And I have not hit a maximum on the number of images that you can create. I'm sure that there is a maximum. But yeah, no, it's as simple as that. And as I'm building these, each time I move to a new location, like let's go ahead and head up here. Let's do something like this. And I'm going to click the plus mark and create another new image. Okay, so I've got these that I can start working through. And each one of those are capable of having its own settings. Okay, so if you'll notice, this is a really important thing that kind of freaks people out when you start on Twinmotion, because some editing things are going to change and move around. When you see this pink button right over here to the right, it says quit media mode. Okay, what that means is I am currently in media mode. Any change that I do, any modifications that I make are made for this view only. They are not being made globally. Okay, so if I come in like settings, notice how that's grayed out. I can't even get to my settings anymore. Right? And that's because right now I am editing, I'm doing image level editing. I'm not editing globally. Okay, so really important to note. If I need to make global changes, then I need to go quit media mode. And now I'm back sort of to, you can think of this almost like in Revit, editing a family or editing the entire model. Same kind of concept, but for this, it's about editing an image. Once I click on an image, that button pops right back up. I'm back into media mode again. Okay, so one of the first things to think about on this is my lighting is nifty. Okay, it's pretty good quality lighting, and it's certainly acceptable, but it's not next level. Okay, so let's think through it as a class. And if you don't know, this will shock all of you. Dave likes drama. Drama. Show me that. Exaggerate to communicate, right? You've had me for a studio, all the way back down to Foundation Studio Art, the Todd Lowry statement, exaggerate to communicate. So if I'm going to do this kind of view, what am I trying to exaggerate? What kinds of things can I start to bring in to really exaggerate and amplify this view? What should I do? Somebody give me an idea. Go. Height. What do you mean by height? The height of that first face right there. Pretty tall. Okay, so yeah, no, I could zoom in a little bit. Like I could come in a little bit more, get that a little bit more rule of thirds off to the side. So I'm going to kind of line up that as my center point and that jetting off the side of the page. A little more drama in terms of the framing. Sure, I'm not going to go up because I want to be down low. I like this idea. I have thoroughly bug sprayed myself. I'm in all this tall grass, snapping a picture, getting the money shot of Cliff House. What else? What else should I do? I'm out in the wild. Again, you have to remove yourself from seeing this as virtual. I'm out in the wild. I got all of nature at my disposal. What else should I be doing to get this to become a better image? I just taking whatever the day gives me. Like, well, it's kind of cloudy. Fine. Or if I'm being paid a couple $1,000s to go out and photograph this house, what am I waiting for? Yeah, what if I do sunset, right? What if the background, what if the sky was much more dramatic than this? Cool? And again, that is completely at your disposal because we're working in a virtual world, right? So I've got two ways that I can do that. First, I can come in and click More right here under this image. And I can go to my lighting tab. And I can modify some of the exposure, right? And that's literally like changing the exposure of a camera, right? Really exact same kind of thing. I can also adjust my ambient light quality. But what I'll tell you, in terms of this, the defaults are pretty good if you want just like some basic things. I can also come back and under the location tab, I can change the time of day. And I'm not sure what sunset's going to do or sunrise is going to do. Let's just kind of flip through and look at it. There we go. Yeah, it does a thing. It's a little red though, right? And that's because, so what's happening in this is the base daylight rendering is kind of like, you can think of it as a model on your desk, and I've got a flashlight, a spotlight, a single spotlight that's shining down on this. And the software is smart enough to know, okay, it's cutting through more of the environment. So as the sun's going down, it is going to start changing the color, sunrise and sunset. But it's also just kind of a big wash of different color. And that's not really the way the sky works, right? The sky actually there's much more ambient light coming down from the sky. Okay, so if I want to do sunrise, sunset, or I even want to do noonday sun as a key rendering, right? This is a super important rendering. It has another method for me past just adjusting the time of day. So I'm going to set that a little bit back to a default. And note, one of the key things, like if I was just going to use this, not the shadows coming toward, right? I talk about this all the time with renderings. When shadows are coming toward the camera, I lose the definition on these surfaces because they are in shadow. Once I've got the shadows coming away, those things pop. They become much, much better looking. I can see much more definition on them, right? So almost always, 9 times out of 10, I want shadows going away from the camera. But let's go back a few levels even more here. And let's go back to more. And back into location. Is it location? It's not in location. I'm sorry. It's underneath lighting. There is a tool that is pretty much brand new. It's been around for 1 or 2 releases, I believe, called Skydome. And what Skydome is going to do, Skydome is going to completely replace the lighting system, the environmental lighting system inside of Twinmotion. So for your key renderings, this becomes really important, okay? So I'm going to turn Skydome on, and it's going to take a minute here. But what it's going to do is it is going to replace the base rendering system and give me lighting based off of the actual image of the sky itself. Okay, so if you notice, it took a few minutes to sort of rerun, and you'll notice the shadowing is much softer. It's much more realistic. It's not as harsh because my lighting isn't only coming from like a single spotlight or the sun shining down as a single point of calculation, but it's actually calculating light coming from this entire dome of an image. But this isn't the time of day that I want. I wanted sunset, right? So if I go back to image and I go to location, I've got time of day, but you'll notice it's not really doing what it was doing earlier, right? Reason why? I'm not changing the background image, right? So this background image, turning Skydome on, is overriding the lighting in terms of time of day. So what I have to do if I want sunset is I need to go into my library and open up my Skydome tab. Okay, underneath Skydome, we want morning and afternoon. Morning and afternoon? Yeah, I guess so. And we want cloudy because drama. Let's see what we can find. So all of these, and if you notice, these again, all of these are on the web. These are all on the cloud. These are not stored onto your computer because each one of these Skydomes, I would say they range from 30 megabytes to 50 megabytes. Okay, and I think there's something like 500 of them that are available to you. So you really don't want all of these installed. So they are going to come in based off of. These are going to come in based off of your selection. There wasn't enough drama there, by the way. I want more of a low sun. Let's see what we can find. There we go. Yeah. Low sun, cloudy, 16. That one seems really exciting. Okay, so to apply that, I'm going to hit my download button. And come on, Wi-Fi. That's not too bad. It's going to take about 30 seconds, it looks like. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit. While that's happening, what else should I be doing? I want more drama. This is going to dramatically change my lighting. What are some of the other things I can do? Okay, so again, think like a photographer. Not a photographer with your phone. Think like a photographer. Who's taking the class in photography here? None of you? Shame on all of you. Go take photography classes. Who has used a camera other than their phone? What are some of the other things that you can do, those of you that have used a camera, to actually amplify something like this low view house coming up? What are some of the other tricks that I can do? Tricks is totally the wrong word. But what else can I do? So when you're using a real camera, do you have to worry about what's in focus and what's out of focus? Or do you just like set it to be just like your phone and put everything on auto? Auto all. I don't want to think. And if you do, shame on you. You're not actually using a camera. Right? I can set field of view, right? Or not field of view, depth of field. And I can say, okay, I want foreground blurry. I want background in focus. I can do some things like that to really change how I'm seeing things, okay? So let's look at that next. So I've got this guy is now downloaded. To apply this Skydome, all you got to do is drag and drop it into your scene. And it's going to take a minute to put that onto the geometry and another quick minute to calculate the lighting. And voila. Now I've got a different Skydome. And you notice that's where the sun is. And you'll also notice that's how shadows are being cast. Okay, so it's literally using the location of that sun in the image to build shadows. That's why I've got this big shadow right here. I can also take that Skydome and I can rotate it around. To maybe do some stuff like that. And I'm totally breaking my rule. I just said shadows not coming towards me. Totally doing shadows coming towards me. I can kind of do something like that. And maybe we can even get to the point of looking at some God rays with that coming across. That's actually a little better. I've got a little bit. So right now I've got the sun just a little bit off to the left. So while the shadows are coming toward me, I'm also seeing difference between these two surfaces. Cool. So let's go back into, that was using that. Match sun, right? Turning that on and off basically turns what I was calling the flashlight, that's the sun. It's turning that on and off. Typically we want that on with the Skydome. Let's go let's go back into our media mode. Image. And more again. And if I go to camera, you will see DOF. That is depth of field. Okay, if I turn depth of field on, what I'm going to get is sort of an immediate blurring of things. The default, if I go to more, the default distance right here is 3.28 feet. This is much further away, so I might take that up to something about, oh dear, that, let's say about 35 feet. And I can even drop the camera down some. Right, like that. So now I'm getting some foreground, background, depth of field things happening. I could do the same thing with a tree, something like that. But I kind of like this idea of having some really nice foreground, background things for how this will do a final rendering. So essentially, I've kind of set my camera on the ground, and I'm taking a picture through the grass, but keeping the house itself in focus. Okay, and I kind of want to get this sort of recentered again, so I'm going to zip this way just a bit. And too much. That's better. So I'm starting to do something like that. Okay, so the next thing that I can do, let's go back into my base images. And let's look a little bit at weather and effects. So, smog. I wish they wouldn't have named it smog. That sounds very environmental pollution-y, right? But just doing a little bit of that with the smog, it will even get what we like to call the God rays through the cloud and through the trees. But I'm going to ramp that up a bit. And again, what smog does is it, again, amplifies my depth of field. It provides more depth in what I'm seeing. In other words, these trees here on the right that are closer to me are going to be more saturated in terms of their color than these trees in the distance. And often in computer renderings, that is missing. Everything is in focus. Everything has equal illumination. Everything has equal color values. And that has a tendency to flatten out the image, which we don't want. We want to be able to see depth and explore like how far away this is to that. Again, we're trying to create something more immersive when we're building these images. Okay? The other thing that we can do with something like this as well is we can certainly come in and modify the weather. Again, I don't have the opportunity really anymore to adjust the cloudiness of the sky with this slider. The default Skydome, this will do that. We have replaced that Skydome, though, with one of these, and they are not interactive yet. But I can also, I almost always do this because, again, green is one of those really tricky things in a rendering, you guys. So I almost always pull, I don't do a lot of wintry stuff, but I almost always pull a little bit of the green out of the trees with this slider right here. Bump it a little bit closer to fall. Things are just a little less saturated, just look a little bit better, allow you to focus on the architecture a bit more. Cool. From here, I'm going back and back. That's image 1. You can see that that is saved. If I go to image 2, notice all that stuff is gone. Completely different set. All of that work that I did was only for this image. Okay? And if your attitude is like, well, crap, but I wanted more of those, I loved that lighting, what you can do with this is I can move the camera to a new location, set up a similar kind of rendering. Oh, too much. Let's change the speed here really quick. Just a reminder, the eyeball, the speed, let's change that to walking speed. So my home keys or my WASD keys are going to move less. Let's do something about like that as a rendering. There we go. And all I need to do is click plus and add that in, right? So now I have that exact same rendering setup, 2 different views. So if I'm really happy with that setup, I can just keep moving it around. But when I go to this, I've got to reset my Skydome, all that stuff, which is good, right? Because I might want a completely different time of day for this one. When I click Quit Media, you'll notice I am back to the default on everything, right? I'm back to my default Skydome. I can make changes. Any change that I do here. So let's go, for instance, if I go to my setting, weather, and we make it cloudy and raining, right? When I go back to my media, images, all that stuff goes away. And I'm back to editing those media images again. So understand that sort of I'm editing the world, I'm editing this view from this world, right? It's really important to note how that process is going to work. So we're building up 3 to 5 of these, being super creative with your view, at the same time being experimental. Experimental being this class in particular. This isn't studio, right? So be more experimental in this class. Begin to figure out what's working well for you, right? Also be immersive. We're not doing interior renderings yet. That's coming. But what we want to make sure that we're doing on this is getting a really good understanding of the entire building, right? So don't give me 3 experimental views that are all 10 feet apart, right? So go ahead and position a few different locations. Also, I don't want to see views. Like, I'll be very reasonable with this. Be smart about it, right? That doesn't make for a very good rendering, right? So I am evaluating you on your ability to do those things, right? If the world falls off the edges, I'm going to, wow, you should have built more world. If this view was really important to you, you need to build more world, right? If you're wanting to build a rendering like that sort of puts the thing on a pedestal and like makes it look like it's a model sitting on your desk, it's a totally different thing. You could totally go there and make that work, but you need to go there and make that work, right? Wouldn't advise that just yet. I would advise you getting into these more immersive views first, enough things to explain the building, the design, what you have modeled. Okay, so output, and then we have time for Q&A and work. Output, I'm only going to do output. Well, let's just go ahead and do output for all 3 of them because output is so stinking fast. So here we're going to have a decent amount of attention to what's going to happen, 0 amount of attention to what's going to happen other than placing a camera, and then a copy of that first one, different angle. Right, and I would encourage you, if 3 to 5 are due, right, by Monday, I would encourage you should be building 20 views easily and curating your best 3 to 5. Okay, because the rendering takes no time whatsoever. And again, experimentation is totally rewarded. So, working down to my output, I'll see that I've got image right here. I can click on empty. I'm going to select all 3, or what you should be doing is selecting all 20 or so. From there, I am going to click more at the bottom because this is where we are double checking to make sure everything is working. 3D mode, that's going to render out 2 images, left eye, right eye. We don't need it. Refinement, probably do need it a little bit. It's going to take longer to render. If I am, going for billboard size, which we probably aren't, but you might be at some point in time for a client, I'm probably going to need that refinement set all the way up to something like high. If I have moving objects, cars, peoples, things like that, it might be worth turning on motion blur, but I wouldn't for any of these. Okay. Max lighting, I really already feel pretty good about my lighting quality. Don't feel like I need to change that a lot. Again, it's just going to add render time to it. Let's go back one more setting here because it is per view. I always forget that it is per view. If I click more and camera, oh, where is it? There we go, format. Let me step back here. I'm in media, image. Let's do this first. Right now, this is named image 1. I should totally name this, right? So ellipses, rename, ground view. Something like that, right? Name your images. That way, because also you're not going to have an option to save image name. So if I've named it here, when I export this image, it's going to retain that name. and it's a lot easier to navigate having some names than image 2, image 3, 4 through 20. Okay, so let's go right here to more, and then last piece right here is format. This is where we set the resolution, how big the image is that we're rendering. For this project, I would do 4K UHD. Okay, that is going to create a really good sizable image. I would say 4K is going to be standard for pretty much every board that you're ever going to do. That's going to give you a really good quality 11-inch by 17-inch image. So probably too high of a quality to upload to the internet, but I'd rather have something higher quality that then gets downgraded as it goes to Google sites than have something that starts low and gets lower. Okay, so 4K is a good standard. If you notice, like if these for some reason are taking 2 or 3 hours to render, which they shouldn't, then that would be one of the first things that I would change, is coming back to rendering out at 2K. Okay, so that is, and also you'll note there is a custom size. So if I need something that is 10 feet by 8 feet, we can do that too. Just be prepared for the time crunch that it's going to take. All right, so I'm back to media, and that is per image. So I do need to do that on each one. 4K. And 4K. So all of those are set to a 4K image type. So I'm back to my image output. I've got all 3 of those selected. All of those settings I'm totally fine with. All I need to do now is click Start Exports. And it's going to ask me where I want to save them to. For right now, I'm just writing them to my desktop. And this should only take, I don't know, a minute tops to get all of these. Which is why, I mean, why not do 15 or 20 of them? Right, and then you can curate which ones are looking better. Okay, there's render 1, 2, and 3. Right? Now, if you'll notice, one of the things that I messed up on that ground view image, I had pushed that camera a lot closer to the ground. What went wrong? It's really simple. Let's go back to media, image, and that first image. If I lower that, if I make a change to this location, like that, I've got to hit the refresh button. Totally forgot to do that to save its location. So this is set up so that, you know, I can kind of move all the way around and find things, but it's always going to snap me back to that location. It's not saving each move that I do, and that is a feature, not a fault. But you've got to remember to hit the button. So I want to go back and replace that button because I like the idea of that blurry grass in the foreground, I think. So I'm going to go back. Let's export that again. I don't want those two. I just want ground view. Start exports to the desktop. Should only take a second to do here. It named it ground view 1, didn't it? Yep, or ground view 000. There we go. That looks awful. Looks like green lightning bolts coming across my building. Well, it's terrible. I should have stuck with the other one. Right? But I mean, again, that experiment took all of 30 seconds for me to find out. Sometimes it works great. Sometimes it doesn't. This would officially be one of those that didn't work great. Which is why build multiple views. Curate really excellent images on this. Cool? We covered weather. We covered depth of field. We covered Skydomes. Yeah, that's it. Those are the 3 things. And we covered exporting these things, which for the most part you already knew. Right? So we are workday. Rest of the day.